Hi, welcome to my video podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me. Of
Thank you
course.
for agreeing to do this. This is very exciting for me.
No problem. I forget what we're doing. It took so long to set up.
I'm so sorry. Well, basically, I started a Patreon like 4 months ago, and each month I do like a tutorial. And I forget who asked for it last month, but someone asked for like style, design, and simplification. And I was like, oh God, like that's something I am working on and struggle with all the time. So I'm like, why not ask the master himself to basically do this month's tutorial for me in the form of an interview? So that's why you're here today. And thank you so
Oh,
much.
I thought you were talking about Sebastian Kruger, the master himself.
Oh, oh man. And you're humble. Great. No, I actually think you're a genius and your characters are freaking amazing. And I'm looking at them right now and I don't even know where to start, but I will retell this story so other people can. I might put, if you don't mind, some of your old work in this video. It'll like pop up for them to see
For sure.
because Chris Misi just shared these images with me, and it's Eric's art from when he was in school, and they're really freaking awesome, but they're really representational. And I wonder, when was the shift? Like, what drugs do I need to buy to get on your level? Like, what happened? Like, what was the turning point? Like, do you just want to take the floor? Like, how do you want to do this?
Well, the drugs came later.
Yeah.
But no, it started with, yeah, going to art school and learning to draw and paint very realistically using a lot of photo reference. So that was kind of the basis and the foundation for my illustration work. I had started doing caricatures back in high school, which started with a homework assignment of just doing a caricature that week. But then, yeah, I started drawing all my teachers and friends, and I just, from the beginning, I really wanted to push how much I was exaggerating and how creatively I was doing it, but I didn't really know how to yet. There was a big gap between where I wanted to be and what I was able to do. So the first 3 years of doing caricatures, I was drawing at Six Flags over Massachusetts. I grew up in New Hampshire, so it wasn't too far away, and I'd been going to school in Connecticut. So at Six Flags, we were pretty much all drawing in a similar realm of kind of just straight on caricatures too, not even three-quarter views or profiles, and fairly representational, pretty much in the Tom Richmond style of caricature, where it's a little bit more of the a little bit more like straightforward illustration, not super wacky or cartoony. And I think part of that was because we were using pencils, dark pencils, and airbrush, so that kind of lends itself a little bit more for realism.
Yeah.
But I wanted to push further than that, and after going to my first caricature convention, that was after my second summer of doing it, I had my mind blown from just how many amazing different styles were out there, and during that convention realized like, oh, the world of caricature is so much bigger and more creative and expansive than I ever imagined it could be. So as soon as I started seeing like a lot more exaggerated, cartoony, wild, super creative stuff that like Brian Oakes was doing, Aaron Philby, Nate Cap, and a bunch of others, Marlowe, I just started seeing like, oh, there's so much further I can go with this, and that's what I wanted to do. I've always been kind of drawn towards very creative, kind of out there, monster-esque type illustrations. I used to always love reading like Goosebumps as a kid and loved the covers, which were very like bright and vivid and kind of exaggerated poses. So I think I've always been leaning towards the extreme exaggeration and love Looney Tunes too, which is very exaggerated and expressive. So it wasn't until learning, kind of learning how to push it further and seeing what you could do with caricature that I started really experimenting more, especially when I moved out to San Diego. That was to be able to draw with a lot of other artists and to kind of feel like I'd be worthy of being in their presence, like pushing myself enough to show like, oh, I have the fire to want to do this and try new things. So I've been kind of rambling for a while now.
No, this is great. Was it like a slow transition to your style, what it is today, or was there like a moment or like a year that you were like, let's go. I'm doing a nose in one line because you have such a strong like classical, like you know what I mean? Like obviously you went to art school, like it's like rendered so nicely. But was this a gradual change or did you just was there a
I think
moment?
during the first year after moving out to San Diego, that was when my style changed probably the most dramatically. I had shifted from pencil and airbrush to working with markers and art sticks. Um, and just the way I was drawing with those, I was going for a lot more cartoony. I was going for three-quarter views, but didn't really know how. And also, uh, something I had read something about Picasso speaking about how photography kind of flattens the 3D reality into a flat photo that doesn't really represent three dimensionality and the different angles and perspectives of something you can see in person. And that's part of the reason why he went into cubism, was to show like multiple angles of the same face kind of coexisting within one form, and thought, oh, that'd be kind of interesting. Like, what is it about this person's face that's interesting from a profile? I'll draw that feature in profile, but maybe they have like really close together eyes, so I'll draw the eyes like straight on, and just kind of melding different perspectives in a way that is like so wrong that it actually kind of works. And I think that's kind of laid the foundation for the style that would start to evolve. And then kind of design aspects came into that. A couple years later, I had gone out to South Korea to work with Yanni's company at the same time that Aaron Philby was out there. I'd been living with Aaron for a while, and then he went out to Korea, and I went about a month later. And we had this paper that we drew on, which had kind of a designy border, like maybe a quarter or so inch from the edge of the paper. And I started using
Yeah,
that border.
the red border.
Yeah, yeah. Oh,
I
yeah,
think I had, yeah, I think I
you
had
were
the
in Korea
same.
too, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I started using that line as part of the design of my exaggerations. And then when I
Cool.
started thinking like, oh, I can think about a caricature in a way where I can exaggerate using composition. Like, how can I fill the space with positive and negative space in an interesting way that um, basically, like, I'm kind of using that, the composition as a launching point for how I can, like, push a feature further. And I think if you look at my work, you'll see the craziest ones tend to have a fairly interesting, unique composition. And I'll try to come up with ways of filling the space that I've never done before.
Yeah.
So that's one of the greatest ways to push your exaggeration, is like, how can I really make use of this page in an artistic, creative way?
So you mentioned Aaron Philby and Brian Oakes and all these guys that you were working with that were really influential, but somehow your art style is like so hit you in the face, Eric Goodwin. What do you like, what do you recommend for people that are really inspired by all these people but are looking for their own style? Like, how did you remain true to your own style in drawing next to like some people with the coolest style? Like, how did you just like,
Hmm.
I'm inspired, but I'm not going to copy them at all. Like, look, let's go this way.
Yeah. I did start by pretty much literally copying some of their drawings before I moved out to San Diego, just to see like, how would you use a marker, because I'd been used to using pencils. How would you use art sticks? I didn't know that
Yeah.
foamies were a thing, so I'm like, how are they getting the color so smooth on there?
Right. Oh,
Um,
wow.
I copied like a drawing out of Joe Bloom's Rejects book. Um, so all of that was good practice, and then just really like spending some time looking at other people's art, especially like a side by side with reference photos, was huge for me to just look into other people's thought process, and then see like, oh, this person's doing this, but that other person's doing something maybe similar, but they're doing something different. If you look at a lot of other people's work, you can see what's been done, and that kind of eliminates a lot of things that haven't been done. So you have to kind of start to experiment and see what can I do that I haven't seen someone else do before? Um, but there's that whole expression of there's nothing new under the sun, but it's really about how you kind of become like your own melting pot of other people's styles and influences on your work. And if you try to achieve something that doesn't necessarily fit into like a certain box, like maybe someone wants to have a certain style that like then dictates all the rest of their work. But I think
Mm.
my style is a little bit more of like I try to go outside of the box of what I've done so that I'm always trying to do something new, because if I'm not, I get like really bored and I feel kind of jaded about my work. Like I really need to
Yeah.
always be trying new things out. And that might just be like looking at how I could use color. Um, the art supplies I'm using can make a huge difference. Like when I started using highlighter gel pens, like Kiko gave me a couple gel pens. And then when I started pushing the color, because I've always wanted to push color, I realized like, oh, the highlighters totally changed the game for how my art can look. And then it's hard to kind of go back and not have super bright colors after that.
Yeah. Oh, side note, I have new supplies for you. Have you tried the Marabou art crayons?
No.
Oh my God, I'm gonna send you some. You'll have to give me your address. I'm gonna send you them for this
Oh, really?
because
Oh, cool. Thanks.
yeah, they're so freaking awesome. It's like butter. You know how you're always like, I feel like when I think about your work, it's like super bold, and I'm like, I'm getting carpal tunnel just looking at your drawings sometimes. There's art crayons, they go on so smooth, and you can fully saturate the page. The only downside is they're so like smooth and buttery, you don't get fine lines like you do with Neocolor, but you can do your whole backgrounds, and they have like shimmers and they have all sorts of colors, and I'll send you them because they're freaking amazing. You're gonna lose your mind.
The next day.
Looks like I got a little something from someone named Kelly O'Brien. A buttery smooth, wax-based soft pastel, suitable for a variety of fine art and mixed media work. Interesting. Looks like some good, solid, easy color.
But do you think, are you saying that your style is like kind of a melting pot of things that you're influenced by, or is this coming from deep inside Eric Goodwin's brain mostly?
Oh, there's nothing actually in there. It's just a reflection of the rest of the world.
Wow,
There's no.
cool.
I don't know. I just I've
Trippy.
always been very observant. Like as a kid, I was super quiet and shy, so I was always just kind of people watching, and I always loved reading. So just having a lot of different perspectives, I think helped as a kid too. And I just had that creative outlet with like art, but also like origami, making paper airplanes, building stuff, Legos, anything that's kind of inspiring and creative. I would be drawn to, and I think kind of going back to one of your earlier questions, when you when you look at other source material for inspiration that maybe other people aren't looking at or aren't kind of drawing inspiration from, that's a good way to set your style apart from others. And I started
Mm,
realizing like you can kind of get a little locked into the world of caricature if you're only looking at other caricature art. But if you're looking at
yeah,
other illustrators, painters, even like I listen to a lot of stand-up comedy, and I love music, and a lot of that can just inspire different ideas. Like, oh, this artist is doing this, where they're really breaking the mold and creating this surprise. Might not literally translate to a caricature, but there's something about that energy that makes me want to do something different and unique as well. That
yeah,
creates that element of surprise where if I can make myself laugh, then that's I must be doing something right because I've done so many of these that it can become harder and harder to do something that feels fresh and new unless you kind of develop that pattern of and that habit of trying to push yourself into something new as soon as you start feeling like, I don't know how I feel about caricature. I've kind of done everything I could. Really, that's just kind of finding like the edge of your own imagination at that point. But you can
yeah,
always find new inspiration from seeing what other people are doing and just trying new things. Especially if you might not have something as an intention while you're working on a drawing, and you just kind of play, and you're not thinking about what are the rules that I would normally use to create something, you're much more likely to surprise yourself with an outcome that might not even feel like your style. I think for me, like if it feels like fresh and new, that's kind of part of my style of thinking is trying to just be surprising and bold and
Yeah.
weird. But there's a million different goals you can have with a caricature. It could be uh, humor, it could be exaggeration, composition, line, color, contrast, uh, or who knows, like just even realistic rendering. Anything that feels
Yeah.
kind of outside of your wheelhouse is probably a good thing to try to delve into and see if you can work on. So there's still a million things that I could get better at.
Do you start with the same feature most of the time, or do you like some of your characters like are so different from the like I feel like I'm trying not to have a formula in my own caricatures, but at the end of the day, it's like I did the nose and then I did the eyes, and then I'm like, oh, that shape kind of looks like this other drawing I did. But yours seems so different from each other. Is it because you're like, where's your mental state? Do you start with an eye and then sometimes you start with the ear? Like, what is going on in your head when you're making art like this?
Often I think I'm starting with whatever feature I think should be in the foreground. Just kind of obvious, but if you want like a nose to be in front of the eyes, you should draw the nose first and then draw the eyes behind the nose. If you want the
Mm.
mouth to really come forward, you might want to draw the mouth and then draw the nose behind the mouth and the eyes behind the nose. Um,
Whoa, cool.
so yeah, I think that can be. I try to imagine a rough idea of how I'm going to be exaggerating, and sometimes I'll do an undersketch or two or three or 10. Other times I'll just be like, I kind of want to like freestyle this. So depending on what mode I'm in, I might start differently, but try to kind of imagine the overall composition before I draw any lines. If I'm like
Yeah.
really in the mode. If I'm kind of work mode, business mode, I might not be thinking as creatively. But
Do you do
every
much undersketching
yeah,
or planning?
I do it most of the time.
Hmm.
Um, but sometimes I won't if I'm not really going for it, or other times I really want to go for it, and I don't want to have kind of that undersketch getting in the way of what I can do creatively. It can
Yeah.
either like be something that helps you be much more creative and precise, or sometimes if that becomes your norm, then that might be a bit of like a crutch that might actually be getting in the way of doing something new. So sometimes I'll draw a feature and then I have no idea how I'm going to continue the face after that, which kind of puts me in a challenging situation where I don't know where the drawing's going. And I
Yeah.
kind of like that kind of
Mm.
danger aspect of it. Like,
The danger.
all right,
Yeah.
I dug myself a hole. Let's see if I can
Yeah. It's like a
sculpt
puzzle.
a ladder to get out of this hole.
Yeah, I feel that.
And
Yeah, it's fun to
maybe the
surprise
face looks like a
yourself.
ladder. So.
So one of the comments I got when the patrons were talking about this month's video is like they start drawing and then all of a sudden it's like they want to do all this design and style stuff, but they get stuck like, holy crap, it just looks like a regular nose. Like, how do you how do you boil down a nose or an eye like so simply and unique and like exaggerated and designy? Like, what do you recommend for these people? I'm not talking about myself.
First off, if you're labeling it as an eye or a nose, you might be
Uh-huh.
getting caught up in what you think that has to look like. If
Mm.
instead you're looking at what can I make, how can I create an interesting shape that I haven't made before?
Well,
Like how does this line, how does this angle, how does this curve relate to something else? If you get used to like, all right, I'm drawing a nose, well, a nose has to have the nostril and maybe that there. But if you're just thinking like, oh, maybe I could kind of have this overlap there, but then this line overlaps that, and then oh, the nostril could be like parallel to this line, or it could just float in the middle. Like if you're just thinking about shapes and lines in relation to themselves
Right.
instead of, but of course still inspired by the face you're looking at and trying to find the uniqueness of it, then you're not, you might not be getting as caught up in trying to be as representational with it.
Yeah. Wow. I love that. Inspired by the face that's in front of you instead of like trying to freaking make a portrait. That is so cool.
Yeah, if you really use the face as the inspiration instead of how does this face match my style. And there's times and places for trying to make a face match your style. But if you're letting the face dictate and inspire the style, you're probably more likely to
Wow.
uniquely capture that person's uniqueness.
Right. I see Damon Renthrop do that a couple times. Usually it's a hot chick when he does that, but sometimes like their style is so cool that his whole drawing style changes, and I find that super inspirational.
Definitely. And he does some of the
Yeah.
funny stuff out there too.
Yeah, he does some really hilarious stuff, and then a hot chick will sit down and he does like this really like I'm like, whoa, like that would be a cool tattoo or something, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Wow, awesome. And this is a question from me, but because I want to apply this because I'm about to do a fair with draw some faces because I just did a Comic Con, which is more like more realistic, but I'm about to have like freedom to run. And how do you how do you do that for the regular public of, oh, the nostril can overlap here and the angle of this, and then how do you sell that?
You can sell anything. I mean, it's just about the confidence that you have in what you're doing
Yeah.
and having samples of so that people have an idea of what you're going to do.
Yeah.
The most difficulty comes from people expecting something different from what you want to do. Um, but also, like, your style is one of the most appealing styles in all of caricature. So I can't imagine you having trouble selling something.
Well, I feel like I'm kind of like pigeonholing myself at the same time. Like it's cool to have a really appealing style, but sometimes I want to not have such an appealing style and I want to try new things and
Mhm.
draw really creative and do something crazy. And then I get scared and
Mhm.
I don't know how to like prep them, or I find myself like apologizing before I even show it. And I don't know how to like because I'm trying not to have an ego about my work, but it's also like you're talking about having confidence in your work. But it's like, how do you have confidence in front of the customer without like feeling like you're. Do you have answers for these questions?
Yeah, you have to just know that the customer, for the most part, is trusting your own judgment. They don't know that much about caricature or about drawing most of the time. If they do know much about drawing, then they're probably going to appreciate you doing your thing. So if you assume the common person doesn't know that much, and what you're creating is the only thing they know that you're creating, unless they've seen some of your other work like right before that, um, which can happen as well. And sometimes you might want to like up the ante with each drawing until people are still waiting for your style, but now it's getting crazier and crazier, funnier.
Yeah.
But if they just come in totally raw with no expectation of how your style looks and you just go for whatever, they're not going to have the other drawing of what you normally would have done to compare it to. They might have an idea in their head of how someone else has drawn or other caricatures they've seen, other caricatures they've gotten of themselves, but for the most part, every drawing is its own unique creation and experience anyway. So really, you're only getting in the way of yourself.
Yeah. Oh, always, every single time.
But really, it's just like a habit you form of getting used to trying new things.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are surprised that I can sell what I draw because it tends to be pretty out there. But like most of the year, I'm drawing with my own setup, with my own samples, and people are either pretty excited about that or really don't want that. it's
Mm.
pretty polarizing for the most part. So
Yeah.
I've already set myself up for people to like what I'm gonna do, and I have like a decent range of my style on display as well.
Yeah.
So if people come over and I can tell they're not about it, I have no problem saying like, I don't think this is going to be for you. I don't think you're going to like it. I don't think I'm going to enjoy doing this either. So I recommend just finding another artist whose style you're excited about.
Yeah.
And often there's like another artist down the way that they're probably going to enjoy more too. So it's just kind of a win-win to just know when to say no,
Right.
because you have a much better idea of what you want to do than potential customers might know of what you're going to do. So trust yourself, trust your own judgment. You're the expert of your own style, and whatever you're excited or want to try to do is really only limited by your own imagination and kind of courage of just going for it. But you can sell anything.
Cool. Yeah. You have a great personality for it too. Like you're very kind, but also like you're just like very straightforward with it. Like I can't imagine
Yeah,
getting
I
too
could.
upset like
Mhm.
at my
Yeah,
drawing.
I let people know what they're gonna expect, and try to have a good like sense of humor about it, and try to have people understand it's supposed to be a fun experience. So
Yeah.
if they're a little too worried and that they might get offended, I'm like, yeah, you probably shouldn't get drawn by me then. And that's fine.
Mm.
But yeah, you don't go
Yeah.
to like
Great job.
see some stand-up comedy if you're like, I don't feel like laughing tonight. Like, then what are you doing? You're gonna
Yeah.
the comedian's gonna be like, oh, why aren't you laughing? And you as the audience member is not going to enjoy the whole point of why you're going in the first place. So
Yeah.
I see a lot of parallels with stand-up and like roast comedy with caricature, because it is
Right.
that same experience. It's a little exciting. It's a little scary. Like a comedian might uh, talk to you if you're in the crowd, especially if you're up close. In a similar way, like, yeah, you're a big part of the experience as the customer getting a caricature. So yeah, if you just frame the experience and the art that you want to do in the way that makes you
Yeah.
happy and excited, then that can go a really long way with you, especially being then happy that you're doing it. If you're having a good time, yeah, it might make people a little more excited or nervous, but that's kind of part of the experience too. It's like going on a roller coaster. Like some people don't like roller coasters, but some people want
Right.
to have like a wild ride. So why not give them the wild ride? Especially if you can tell, like, I think these people would be cool with me like going for it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's nice to shake people up sometimes just for
Yeah,
fun.
yeah.
But yeah, I enjoy that. Cool. Is there anything else that you want to tell these people? It's 22 people, 22 whole
22
people.
people.
Actually, less than that because some of them are not the angels sent from heaven. That's what I call them.
I don't know if you had any other questions.
That's it. Maybe more of like just how to boil down a face. Like I'm looking at your Instagram, like I have it pulled up right now, and some of these decisions are like completely 100% them and like exactly like I'm like looking at it I'm like yes yeah it shouldn't be any other way but I'm like how did you get there and how did you get there
Well,
doing it
show me an
live
example and maybe I can talk through it.
maybe this one this chick on the top
Okay.
with her teeth
Um,
and her like hook nose and
right. Let me
I just
pull that up so I can look at it on my phone.
like how'd you do that how'd you do that
So
it's genius the bodies too.
So it says the free meeting will end in 10 minutes. Um, so the
Okay,
person
cool.
on top. So let's see. I'm thinking about
Yeah.
kind of her eyes they have kind of the angle that comes from basically, the corners of the eyes, they go up more than they go down. So I'm often looking at that. But they're also like happy, so I kind of have them curved and up at that angle, slightly cross-eyed. And then I'm thinking the nose is kind of sharp. The front two teeth are significantly bigger than the rest, So I'm going to make those two front teeth a lot bigger. Eyebrows are pretty small. Also kind of textural, not super streamlined. Uh, she had pretty wide shoulders, especially in comparison to her girlfriend. And so I'm just thinking, like, how can I frame this compositionally in an interesting way? She also just
Yeah.
seemed to, like, be more like that than this. So that seemed like a fun way to kind of fill up the frame as well, instead of just having there be a lot of empty space. So I'm looking at likeness, and then I'm thinking of how I can compositionally fill the space in an interesting way. And then in comparison to the person on the bottom who has this huge, wide, tall forehead,
Yeah.
compared to like practically no forehead. So I'm also looking at the comparisons between faces as well. That's a great
Right.
way to to figure out likeness, is to use another face for a basis of comparison. So how can I make these people look as different as possible? Like maybe this one person has like very close together eyes and the other has kind of normal or maybe a little wider apart eyes. Well, I can really exaggerate the difference between that, or the skin
Yeah.
tone difference. So I'm looking at contrast, and looking at contrast of shape, size, spacing, all the caricature basics. But if you're really,
But you just make it so much more fun because I'm just looking at her lip shine right now and
Mhm.
it's so fun. And you make like mundane things that I wouldn't even be present and thinking about drawing, you make them into a design opportunity, which I think is like so cool.
And again, that's just kind of playing with how shapes interact and play with other shapes.
Do you zone out when you draw caricatures at all and wake up and the drawing's done? Or are you present with every line?
I can zone out if I'm talking a lot and really enjoying the conversation. Sometimes I realize like, oh, I haven't been looking at this drawing in 10 minutes while I'm working on
Mm,
it. So that can be a problem. Or other times I'm like, oh, that's what it looks like. Okay. So I can definitely surprise myself like midway through a drawing if I get a little too much in the conversational zone.
yeah,
But if I'm like really in it, I tend to not talk as much, which can be awkward. So I try to like balance it.
yeah,
But yeah, if I'm really in the zone, I'm just really thinking about every shape, every line, and
wow.
again, just like yeah, if I see like a pattern, like the person on the bottom, looking at her nose, had this
Yeah,
kind of like knobby, kind of
it's so cool.
muscly texture to it,
Yeah,
and just like all the smile lines that kind of like circulate out from the nose as well, and
it's so
but
cool.
then all those curves in contrast to the sharp angle of the jaw and the width of the forehead. Yeah, just trying to exaggerate everything, I guess. Personality, exaggerate the composition, exaggerate the differences between people,
Yeah,
exaggerate the differences between features within one face as well. There's really
you're a
nothing you can't
genius.
exaggerate.
You're a freaking genius. I love it. I love it. I'm surprised you're not famous. Why aren't you famous? I mean, your caricature famous, but does that count?
Sure. Well, I'm happy to see people like Aaron and Sammy like blowing up because
Yeah,
those
yeah,
guys are doing some of the funniest stuff I've ever seen, and I've known their work for years, and it's still like funnier than
yeah.
what I've seen them do before in such crazy, unexpected ways. So
Right,
just
right. Yeah,
happy for them that they're like killing it,
they're
getting the
like beyond the
attention.
features. Yeah, they're like
Yeah.
going beyond the features at that point. Like
Oh yeah,
they're like
composition and bodies and playgrounds. Yeah.
it's crazy. Cool. Anything else you want to say or talk about? I
Thanks for
feel like we
having
only have
me.
like five
I mean,
minutes.
I love
Yeah.
your work too.
Thank you for agreeing to this.
I think you're a master of super appealing, really fun exaggeration. It always feels really playful, masterful coloring. Always feels so soft, and just have and man, your murals are like really
Oh,
inspiring to me too
thanks.
right now. Like you're some of the best. You've done some of the best mural work I've seen anybody do. which is just awesome that
Wow,
it's
thank
you.
you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
But yeah, I
Cool.
think just have fun, play around, do new things, and
Yeah.
figure out what it is that excites you. And if you can do that, then that excitement uh, normally rubs off on your customers too, because they can
Hmm.
tell that you're having fun with it, which is the
Yeah.
whole point. Like if you're doing this and you're not having fun, then why do it?
Right. It's so true. The funnest I had, the last gig I worked before this one was putting googly eyes on a grown man. So
Oh
I was
yeah,
like, nah, forget it. And that's why I brought him to the convention because I had like it's been years since I made myself laugh, like drawing a caricature like by
really?
myself, and I made
Yeah,
myself laugh, and it was putting
yeah.
googly eyes
That's
on
where the
him.
gold is. If you can
Yeah, and I'm like,
try
I
to make that
cannot
happen
believe
more
this is
often.
a real job.
Yeah.
Yeah, yes, that's the goal this next fair is to do that. And it's so inspiring to talk to you and like get the download before then, like get inspired. Because it's coming up in like 3 days, I'll be drawing at the fair.
Ooh,
In
awesome.
between, uh, Carlos is going to be there and Sebastian Martin is going to be there. So I
Oh
need to like
man,
bring it.
yeah. Some of the goats of
Yeah,
exaggeration and design.
right. And I don't want them to like try to schedule it so they're not working next to me because my style's too like, let's wait for the girl. I want it to be
Well, I
like
mean
let's go.
that's your opportunity to really try some crazy shit.
Yeah. Yeah, it's coming up. I'm scared.
Good. Use that fear and turn it into excitement.
Right, roller coaster. Roller
Hmm.
coaster. Cool.
Awesome,
Sweet.
Kelly.
Awesome, Eric. Thank
Thanks for having me
you.
on your
I'm
podcast.
gonna send you some. Yeah, thanks for coming to my podcast. Kelly's podcast, Ready to Fight. Woo-hoo.
There you go.
Yeah.
Hope some of it was
Yeah,
helpful or inspiring.
I bet. Like I don't think anyone watched the last month's video. No one commented on it or anything. So I think maybe everyone will watch this one. Like, oh, Eric Goodwin, sir, shoot.
I think at least Jason Colano's going to watch it. He told me he was
Yes.
excited.
Oh yeah. Oh, cool. Yeah. He's very excited. Cool. Hi,
All right.
Jason.
Hey,
Hope it
Jason.
was helpful. Cool.
All right,
Thank
buddy.
you. Thank you. Thank you.
Going to sign off and then I'll make sure this worked.
Okay. Thank you so
Okay.
much.
You got it. Thank you.